The 1960s are remembered as television's golden age, a time when families gathered around the glow of the screen expecting lighthearted laughs, wholesome morals, and safe entertainment designed to unify households. Yet beneath the shiny facade, television was not simply a mirror of American values, but a battlefield where political tensions, cultural anxieties, and shifting social norms exploded into controversy. From variety shows that mocked politicians to sitcoms that dared to twist tradition, television executives lived in constant fear of angry letters, sponsor boycotts, and government backlash. What we think of today as innocent classics were in fact lightning rods that provoked protests, inspired debates, and even changed the course of TV history. The decade revealed that entertainment could never be fully separated from the culture around it, and in trying to suppress controversy, networks only made it more visible. Tonight, we revisit those shows, not as nostalgic artifacts, but as case studies in conflict, programs that forced television to grow up and confront its role as both mirror and agitator of society. Tom and Dick Smothers walked onto CBS stages with guitars and smiles. But beneath their folksy exterior was a satirical edge that cut so deep it terrified executives. Their variety show began harmlessly enough, but quickly evolved into a sharp political weapon, targeting the Vietnam War, mocking President Johnson, and giving counterculture icons a national platform. CBS censors hovered like prison guards, ripping out sketches, cutting anti-war songs, and sweating through every live taping. But the Smothers Brothers refused to yield, daring the network to silence them with sly looks into the camera whenever they slipped in another controversial joke. The battle escalated until CBS canceled the series, turning the brothers into folk heroes for free speech. Their story was echoed by another chaotic sketch show, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, which gleefully taunted authority with its rapid-fire absurdities. Laugh-In, with its psychedelic pace and innuendo-laden humor, was constantly accused of corrupting youth, even as millions tuned in, and even Richard Nixon showed up for a cameo, blurring the line between comedy and politics. Together, the Smothers Brothers and Laugh-In proved that variety television, once dismissed as fluff, could become the most dangerous and controversial form of entertainment in America, making the medium a battleground for satire, censorship, and rebellion. Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future was groundbreaking in its optimism, but in the 1960s it was also incendiary, pushing buttons most shows avoided. With a multiracial cast working together on the bridge of the Enterprise, Star Trek became a lightning rod, most famously when Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura shared the first interracial kiss on American television. Affiliates in the South refused to air the episode. Newspapers called it reckless, and viewers either praised it as progress or denounced it as cultural collapse. But Star Trek wasn't alone in poking at morality and authority. Around the same time, The Fugitive was flipping television's traditional hero-villain script by asking audiences to root for a man wrongly accused, pursued by law enforcement, painted as relentless and cruel.
It's all very easy for you, Gerard, black and white.
Yes, it has to be.
That moral inversion unsettled many but captivated millions, culminating in one of the most watched finales in history. Meanwhile, Mission Impossible brought its own firestorm with espionage plots that had foreign governments filing protests and critics accusing the series of cynicism by showing heroes who bent rules and blurred ethics.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck, Jim.
Together, these dramas demonstrated that television could be more than escapism. It could challenge the audience to confront prejudice, injustice, and the gray areas of morality. Star Trek may have charted the stars, but in truth it charted the turbulence of the American conscience, joined by dramas like The Fugitive and Mission Impossible that pushed viewers into uncomfortable, uncharted moral territory. In an era when most primetime dramas avoided even a hint of scandal, Peyton Place crashed into living rooms with a parade of secrets, betrayals, and forbidden relationships that exposed the rot behind the myth of small-town perfection. It quickly became a lightning rod for protests, with parent-teacher associations organizing boycotts, churches denouncing it from pulpits, and conservative critics calling it televised filth.
I've got to go to school. It's out of your way. Yeah, made in your way is my way. Didn't you know that?
Yet ratings soared, as Americans tuned in precisely to see what they were told to avoid. A pattern of outrage feeding curiosity that would define television for decades. Peyton Place forced networks to admit that audiences craved complex, messy stories, even if they wouldn't confess it. This appetite for soap-like scandal paved the way for shows that dared to blend fantasy with taboo, like Bewitched, which on its surface was a silly sitcom about a suburban witch but underneath stirred furious debate about gender roles, marriage, and whether a wife should constantly outwit her husband.
Oh, idiotic am I? Well, let me tell you something, Sam.
She's here.
Similarly, the Munsters provoked anxiety by making monsters lovable neighbors, with parents fearing children would blur the line between good and evil. Peyton Place, Bewitched, and the Munsters may have looked wildly different.
Be black or yellow or white, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the size of your heart.
But together they cracked open television's veneer of wholesomeness, showing that audiences were ready for programs that stirred disapproval just as much as they delivered entertainment. When Deahan Carroll starred in Julia as a widowed nurse raising her son, it was nothing short of revolutionary television's first portrayal of an African-American woman in a leading role outside servitude. The backlash was immediate, with letters pouring in praising it as progress while others denounced it as fantasy or worse, an assault on social order. Some insisted a black nurse in a middle-class neighborhood was unrealistic.
May I sit down?
Oh, yes, just do. Sit.
Thank you. I take it this interview means that my application met with your approval.
While others argued it wasn't radical enough, dodging the harsh realities of racism. Carroll herself became a lightning rod, celebrated as a trailblazer while enduring racist criticism for embodying change America wasn't ready for. This struggle was mirrored by He and She, another boundary-pushing sitcom of the era. Which scandalized audiences simply by showing a married couple sharing the same bed, triggering headlines about declining decency. Both shows tested taboos about representation and relationships, showing how even the smallest details, whether a woman of color thriving professionally or a husband and wife lying beside one another, could spark national controversy. Julia proved representation could inspire and divide in equal measure, while He and She demonstrated that networks risked backlash simply by reflecting reality. Together, they revealed the deep cultural fault lines television had only begun to explore. The Clampetts struck oil.
And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude.
And moved to Beverly Hills. And America struck a nerve. The Beverly Hillbillies was an instant hit, yet also one of the most ridiculed programs of the decade. Accused of stereotyping rural Americans as simpletons, while lampooning the wealthy as clowns. Critics wrote essays declaring it an assault on cultural values, while rural audiences complained they were being mocked on a national stage. Despite endless complaints, its ratings soared, making it impossible for CBS to ignore. Yet the controversy over rural comedies eventually drove the infamous Rural Purge, in which CBS canceled the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and other similar shows in one sweeping attempt to escape their hayseed image. Green Acres itself added to the storm, blending rural parody with surrealism so strange, talking animals meta-jokes and absurdist humor, that critics accused it of destroying the sitcom format. And then there was My Mother the Car, so reviled for its bizarre premise of a man's mother reincarnated as a talking automobile.
Hello, Davy.
Oh, Mother.
That it became shorthand for television at its worst, sparking angry editorials about networks wasting money on gimmicks instead of quality storytelling. The Clampetts may have been the face of the controversy, but they were not alone. Rural comedies and oddball sitcoms exposed the nation's divide between city and country, tradition and experimentation, realism and absurdity. It is astonishing that one of the most infamous controversies of the decade revolved around a belly button. But Barbara Eden's genie costume triggered a national debate over decency. NBC censors obsessed over how much skin could be shown, drafting memos and literally measuring fabric on Eden's outfit to ensure her navel never appeared.
It's too bad every day can't be a Sunday, huh?
That is a marvelous idea.
What's a marvelous idea?
Newspapers breathlessly covered the saga. Critics denounced the show as suggestive, and viewers either defended it as harmless fantasy or condemned it as indecent. Yet, behind the hysteria, I Dream of Jeannie tapped into broader anxieties about shifting cultural boundaries. This nervousness was echoed in Gidget, another Eden-adjacent series starring young Sally Field as a carefree surfer teen.
If you're in doubt about angels being real.
Gidget horrified parent groups by portraying a teenager with independence and freedom, sparking fears it encouraged rebellion and loose morals. Both Jeannie and Gidget were ostensibly innocent shows. Yet they revealed how even light comedy could ignite outrage when it brushed against anxieties about women, youth, and changing cultural standards. Together, they underscored that controversy didn't always emerge from politics or war. It could erupt from fabric length or teenage autonomy, and in doing so expose deeper cultural tensions about gender and morality. At a time when primetime dramas avoided messy debates, the defenders dove headlong into them. Each week, E.G. Marshall and Robert Reed tackled legal cases dealing with abortion, free speech, civil rights, and capital punishment subjects.
Well, how does getting pregnant girls reinstated in high school fall under the heading of women's rights?
Well, she's coming here at 4:30 this afternoon to discuss it.
So explosive that sponsors fled and affiliates refused to air certain episodes. Critics denounced it as unfit for family viewing, but audiences fascinated by its realism tuned in anyway. The show forced Americans to consider questions they would rather ignore, presenting law not as simple morality but as a tangled, often unjust system. Its influence rippled outward, inspiring later shows to take on bold subjects, even if it cost advertisers. In this way, the defenders opened the door for gritty realism that found new life in series like East Side, West Side, which picked up the torch by focusing on poverty, racism, and addiction in New York City, but collapsed after one season under advertiser boycotts. These shows illustrated how television could function as a civic forum rather than escapism, making networks nervous but viewers engaged. Their courage in addressing society's darkest corners made them lightning rods, but also proved that television could be as provocative as the front page of the newspaper, a legacy that outlasted their cancellations. Sally Field's sister Bertrille, a novice whose oversized cornet allowed her to catch the breeze and fly, was intended as harmless fantasy, but instead inflamed religious groups who accused ABC of mocking sacred traditions. Critics argued faith had no place in slapstick comedy, and every script was combed by nervous executives to prevent fresh scandals. Yet audiences adored Field's charm, making the show a rating success even as protests persisted. The Flying Nun was part of a broader trend of shows that courted controversy by mixing the sacred, the absurd, and the satirical. Just as nuns became comedic, Batman made superheroes campy and flamboyant, sparking fury from parents who accused it of inspiring violence and delinquency in children.
Hey, it's the Batmobile. Just look.
I am looking. And isn't Robin too much?
Religious outrage over the Flying Nun and parental outrage over Batman revealed the same underlying fear that television had gained too much influence over the hearts and minds of the young. Both shows succeeded not in spite of controversy but because of it, their cultural imprint amplified by the very debates that tried to silence them. Campy, colorful, and loaded with pow and bam captions, Batman should have been nothing more than comic book escapism. Instead, it became one of the most debated shows of the decade, accused of corrupting children with cartoon violence and subversive undertones. Parents claimed it encouraged playground fights and undermined schoolwork, while adults whispered that its flamboyance carried hidden meanings. Critics argued over whether it was satire or nonsense, but the controversy only boosted its popularity. Children idolized Adam West, teens embraced its rebellious tone, and even critics who despised it couldn't ignore its cultural pull. The firestorm Batman sparked was mirrored by the Mod Squad, which arrived later in the decade and pushed controversy into the realm of law enforcement.
Look, if Bo took pictures, I want to look at his house.
But you're buying us a bag of trouble.
The Mod Squad, with its young and diverse cast of undercover cops, addressed drugs, racism, and police brutality, infuriating conservatives who accused it of glamorizing rebellion. Together, Batman and the Mod Squad revealed how television, whether cloaked in camp or cool, could upend expectations and force the nation into debate about authority, rebellion, and the influence of mass media. Few dramas confronted reality with as much blunt force as East Side, West Side, starring George C. Scott as a social worker navigating the gritty struggles of New York City. The show tackled poverty, racism, and addiction with raw honesty, and it was both hailed as groundbreaking and condemned as too bleak for prime time. Advertisers bailed. Affiliates refused to air episodes, and CBS reluctantly canceled it after a single season. Yet its spirit lived on in other socially charged dramas, from The Defenders to The Mod Squad, proving that telling uncomfortable truths could resonate even if it killed a show's survival. What East Side West Side revealed was that controversy was not incidental to television. It was its beating heart. Whether through comedy, fantasy, soap opera, or gritty realism, 1960s television was never truly safe. It was daring, divisive, and often dangerous to those who created it. These shows weren't footnotes of nostalgia, but seismic moments that proved television had the power to unsettle, provoke, and transform its audience in ways no one could have imagined when the decade began. Taken together, these programs expose the myth of 1960s television as a harmless golden age. Beneath the laugh tracks and silly premises were bold confrontations with race, class, gender, war, politics, and morality. Each controversy a reflection of the battles shaking America itself. Networks tried to sanitize and censor, but they could not contain the tide. In fact, the controversies often fueled the show's success, ensuring their place in history. Whether canceled too soon or celebrated for years, each of these series left behind more than entertainment. They left cultural scars and triumphs, reminders that television has always been a stage for conflict as much as comedy. The legacy of 1960s television is not safety but risk, not conformity but challenge, and it continues to echo in every show that dares to test the boundaries of what can be said on screen.